So I recently ran a 4-week deadlift training block that led me to a new rep PR with 500 pounds. I just wanted to share with you the structure that I used and some of the thought process around that. So this setup was a 4-week block, which then led me to a test week right into it. What I essentially did was use a constant loading structure where I selected a set intensity, which I used around 90% intensity. I would also relay that to about 1 rep in reserve. And I maintained that for a 4-week block. So to progressively overload, I just tacked on a little bit more volume each week. In week 1, what I did was start with 3 sets of 2. I used a deficit of 3 inches, which you could use between 1 to 3 inches, but pulled that load from a longer range to just work on some discrepancies or imbalances in my hip and knee flexion, and also just make the 90% lift a little bit more challenging through the training block. Week 2 went to 4 sets of 2. Week 3 went to 2 sets of 3. And in week 4, I finished off with 3 sets of 3. So in starting with 3 sets of 2, I added 3 more reps to the volume over time. So finishing with 6 reps, and the 3 sets of 3 finished with 9 reps. Each set, also the consideration there was that there was more intensity given that the rep range increased slightly. From there, I used test week, where I went in and I tested to see how that had gone. The other addition to this as well was that I used a strategy on down sets to work from the floor. The intensity that was dropped from the floor was approximately 10 to 15%. So I used about that much to take off of the working set, and I worked from the floor through AMRAP weight. And when it does come to AMRAP, so as many reps as possible, oftentimes people will just assume that every time that's what it is, but you can set AMRAP weight to certain reps in reserve, which what I did for 3 weeks was I did an AMRAP of 2 reps in reserve, an AMRAP of 1 rep in reserve, and then I went for like a threshold AMRAP in the third week. So this is another strategy you could use where you periodize those kind of strategies as well. So over a training period, this was just a 4-week block, I added more intensity to that down set work afterwards. I mean, the result from this ultimately was that I added 2 more reps to my max deadlift, going from 500 for 1, 500 for 3. And the reason I chose to do that is because I have been experimenting with a lot of these odd lifts and old school applications for deadlifting and running other training blocks for those as well, and had just felt like I'd gotten to a point where I could set myself up for some kind of new PB. So I would think of this more like if someone else was to use this, they would be in about a 4 to 6 week period thinking that they would like to rev up for a 1 rep max test or some kind of max test. So that's often how I will do it as well, through training. Instead of training out like 3 or 6 months of training, when I know I'm kind of set up to potentially hit a PB, then I will kind of just set up 4 weeks out to say, okay, I'm gonna like just get some volume in to just test the waters a little bit to see how the body feels, and I'll see how that goes. One of the other things to add to this too is that I use straps in my deadlift training leading up to that test week, where I didn't use straps. I used just my traditional hook grip. So this is something I haven't experimented with in a long time, but the benefit here, what it does is it allows you to move a little bit away from focusing so much on relying on your grip and thinking about those overloading components of the posterior chain. So I was able to just really focus on allowing myself to reach and get the posterior chain set up correctly for more conditioning rather than relying on my grip to do so. If this would be something you would be considered doing, you could also do this with any other lift as well. So this kind of constant loading structure strategy, it can be applied with squats, it can be applied with, even I've done that similar type thing with some of the old school lifts. Yeah, just a helpful share. If you benefited from this at all, you can kind of like it and share it with your friends and let me know how it helped you.